Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, across all platforms. This is Maverick here, and if you recognize that intro and you recognize my name, then you probably recognize the podcast I normally do. Given the controversy that's going on, I don't want to ride on the coattails of it, so that is why you're getting this on this channel here, and why my partner is not available. Also, our podcast is currently on hiatus. It has been for the last 6 months, and I don't know when we're coming back, so for anyone who's a regular listener, I do apologize for that. But I did want to go ahead and speak out on the controversy surrounding Channel Awesome right now. And honestly, I had started doing this last weekend, but so much information had been coming in that I decided to wait to see what was going to come out of this. And holy shit, what a mess. What a mess this has become. I don't plan on going over the grievances listed in the document simply because a lot of other YouTubers have already, and they've covered it extensively. So I'm not going to be the billionth YouTuber to do that. I'm not even a YouTuber. I consider myself a podcaster, if even that. But I do take issue with a lot of the stuff listed in there. Very unprofessional tactics going on, and I will get into how I feel about the mishandling of a lot of issues listed in there. But before I even get into that, I do feel that I need to be transparent and say that I have met Doug and Rob Walker and their father, as well as Malcolm and Tamara. And they were all very nice, and it was a pleasant experience, although there was one awkward portion of that meeting that I'll get into here in just a minute. But pathetically, I fanboyed pretty hard. I didn't think I was even capable of that. You can hear my excitement on the podcast because I did discuss it that same night. And there's a brief moment in there where I pause because of this awkward moment. And that has to do with the fact that I do have the To Boldly Flee DVD, which I ordered the limited copy that had 2 discs and was signed by the Walkers. And I thought, maybe they could go ahead and sign it again, which they did. The weird part that came from that was that Doug then called Malcolm and Tamara over and had them sign it. To Boldly Flee, which was the last Nostalgia Critic Channel Awesome movie that they came out with. And so I had them all sign it, even Malcolm and Tamara, and I also got them to sign individual and Tamara and I was a little confused by that, although I didn't want to mention it at the time because I didn't want to seem rude because they had just done me this really big favor. But they weren't in the movie. Tamara wasn't around for another 1.5 years, from what I believe, after that movie was filmed, and Malcolm had joined shortly after the filming of that movie, I believe. So he told them to sign it, and they were a little confused, but they went ahead and did it. And I thought it was odd and a little bit of a slap in the face to all the other producers who were in the movie. And it's nothing against Tamara and Malcolm. They were probably just as confused as I was. The look on their face kind of said it all, but they were like, okay. So in addition to getting their autographs on the photographs that they had, they were selling, I got it on the DVD as well. All 4 of them. Outside of that, I mean, all I can say is that that kind of gave me a little bit of a very tiny bit of an idea of the thought process that goes into his head. And I feel it was, I don't want to say naive, but more like he didn't give much thought into what he was actually doing there. Namely, you know, what about the other people who actually did participate in that? You know, that's like if he had won an award and for, you know, this movie that he, you know, let's say for example he got an award for this movie, which he didn't, but for the sake of argument, if he got an award for this movie and the other people involved in it were to share the limelight, but instead he just went ahead and shared it with the two people who weren't involved in it, that's a little bit of a slap in the face. So, and I don't think he did it maliciously. It just, the way to me it came off was more like he wasn't really thinking about it. He was just kind of caught in the moment of the whole thing. Maybe he wanted them to be involved. I don't know, but that little bit of that little moment there kind of gave me an insight into some of the stuff I had been hearing about him in the past. So, which gets me into the whole thing about his directing capabilities and his knowledge on directing and movie sets and whatnot. I mean, to me it seems like he comes off as that he thinks he's like an expert in filmmaking. I've always viewed it as amateurish, which is why I probably still enjoy some of the stuff he does now. But while I see an evolution, I don't see a big evolution in his work. When he quit the Nostalgia Critic, he definitely had a different style in the way he was doing his reviews. And when he did Demo Reel, a show that I thought had some potential. If you watch, I believe it's episode 3 or episode 4, it had Eagle Raptor in it. And I actually thought the show had more potential with the direction they were going in that as opposed to what they had been doing. Sadly, it didn't necessarily go that way. So I saw that he injected some of that style that he was trying to put into Demo Reel into the relaunch of the Nostalgia Critic. And I actually liked it because I thought it gave it a little bit, you know, I thought it gave it new life. And I like the intro music and whatnot. Some people say that his work has gone stale, and I personally don't necessarily see that. I just see that he hasn't evolved. If you take a look at James Rolfe and where he started, and it was all very basic stuff, and as he became bigger, even though he, for the most, I don't know if he has a studio or not, but from what I've seen, he's used more props. I'm assuming they're props he's bought or built. He has gotten, he's been able to hire people to do original score. And that is one thing that did annoy me with Nostalgia Critic once it became more streamlined to what we see now. He uses stock music that I've heard on several other YouTube videos, and you would think that by this point he'd be able to hire someone who'd be able to do an original score. However, that isn't the case, and so what I'm seeing is that they're doing everything in the cheapest possible way while still trying to maintain a professional look. And it's hard to say that there has been an evolution. And I never really paid attention to this or never put any thought into a couple of things. The Indiegogo campaign and the money that everybody keeps bringing up. That is one thing I just overlooked and didn't even give it a second thought. I remember there being a game show that was supposed to be on. I remember when it started showing up in my feed and I had no interest in it just because of how cheap it looked. And everyone goes on about another show that was supposed to have happened, and they're talking about some kind of show revolving around video games. And I do remember at some of the end of some of his older videos that they were supposed to kind of be tacked on to the end, but I didn't watch it because by that time I was already done with Nostalgia Critic, and I honestly should have been something either promoted at the beginning, not the whole video, but like the video promoted and then have like a second video. I don't know how YouTube works. I don't use it much outside of watching videos. But seeing all those and tying it in with the grievances listed, the lack of payment that was going on, and the lack of food and water on sets, and these clauses that people had to sign if anybody got injured. I see that they like to, from my perspective, I see that they like to cut corners. Now, I don't know if this is all Doug and Rob. From what I've been hearing, a lot of this is Mike Machad, and so if he's the one pulling all the strings, then yeah, that's pretty shitty. You know, you're doing everything you can to save money, and you're gonna cut corners and put people's lives in jeopardy in terms of financial stability, and you're overworking people, and just this stuff that went on with the misogynistic tendencies you had towards women, you know, yelling at Allison for having mid-rolls in her ads or in her videos just so that she can make ends meet. That stuff shouldn't have happened. There should have been a more streamlined way of doing business and being able to have them make a living while you guys make a profit instead. And I actually had heard about this firing a while ago, and as a fan, I kind of turned a blind eye to it, even though I saw exactly what was going on. And I feel bad about that. And I call it blind loyalty. You see that these things happen, but in your mind you have such a high viewpoint of this person that you're like, nah, that must have just been a fluke, or there must have been something going on. And we just go on about our day, and you keep hearing more and more about it. As recently as last summer, at the end of last summer, Mars Girl, who I've been following for years, she had finally left Channel Awesome, although I was not following her through Channel Awesome. I was following her through her YouTube channel. And she had mentioned how she had been forgotten. She didn't go into full detail at the time. She went on a podcast with, I believe it's Extra Mana, and she discussed her issues with Channel Awesome. And even then I was like, no, this can't be right, you know. And I just kind of shrugged it along, and here I am not realizing, and pretty much in denial, because actually after hearing that podcast I questioned a lot more of, okay, well, who exactly am I watching? You know, what is it that I am supporting here? Because if they're treating members of of the website like this, then why should I support these people? But I kept on doing it. I mean, the last review I can remember watching was very recent. It was the Maleficent one. But I still wasn't grasping the fact that this was an issue. And then finally, when these documents came out and I've read them in good conscience, I just couldn't watch anymore. And I have a son who I do let watch Nostalgia Critic, and I do monitor what it is. He hasn't seen all of them, so for every parent out there who's going to say, oh my god, it's okay, I monitor it. But he really liked what he saw. My son got into Animaniacs because of Dog Walker, and he wanted to be like him. And I had to have this talk with him that sometimes your heroes aren't the people they are made to look like they are, if that makes any sense. So it's really sad to see that, and it wouldn't be fair for me to say, that to have blind loyalty. I mean, because again, I call it blind loyalty. I stayed loyal to this channel, brushing off aside all this stuff. I mean, over the years, I had heard rumors. I had heard the thing about how Allison got fired. I had heard the thing about Holly getting fired. I believe there was something else that I can't think of off the top of my head, but it was addressed in the podcast. Oh, the thing about Mars Girl, which I was just talking about. Kaylin Salcedo. I heard those grievances, and I still turned a blind eye to the whole situation. So as a fan, as fans, we do have a responsibility as well. We have to hold these people accountable for what they're doing. Otherwise, they just keep doing it. And I, as a fan, let him continue to do this. Now, had I turned my back years ago, this still would have happened, because there's always going to be somebody who's going to side with the people who they believe are innocent in the whole matter. It wouldn't be fair of me to say that, we may have blind loyalty for some of the producers on there. I personally don't, although there is one of the producers that I don't see eye to eye with them, but I've always enjoyed their content, so I give them a pass. But there's still things that I've heard about that particular producer that I'm just like, well, maybe I should stop watching that person, because in some ways I see some things as hypocritical, but I'm not here to start anything. And that's all on me, and I'll make that decision, just like everybody else should make the decision of what they want to do regarding this whole fiasco. And it's really sad. It's really sad to see all this happen. I don't want to see Channel Awesome go down like this. And when I say Channel Awesome, I'm referring to Nostalgia Critic and the crew that's with them. Again, as I mentioned, I did unsubscribe to them. Again, in good faith, I cannot watch them and support them in that matter anymore. But some of these people that have gotten caught in the crossfire, I mean, overall, even the people who didn't intend to, starting with Tamara and Malcolm, they have nothing to do with this, and people are getting onto them because they're defending Doug and Rob. Now, think about that for a second. If you meet somebody, everybody has a past. If you meet that person after they've gone through a series of events, are you going to judge them on that past? What they know of them, of Rob and Doug, is that they are friendly people and they have taken care of them financially and whatnot, and they've given them work and exposure to a very popular medium. They're not seeing all the they weren't there for all the turmoil that went down beforehand, yet people are holding them responsible for it. Well, maybe we don't know what's going on. Maybe they have discussed this. Maybe they've owned up to it. We don't know. We don't even know why Rob and Doug haven't said anything personally, or if they have, we don't know if they're the people behind some of these piss poor responses that have come out. I've heard rumors that it could be Rob. I've heard rumors that it's Mashad. I don't know. It's hard to say, but they are in a very messed up situation, and they're getting caught in the crossfire. And if people are if they're defending them, that is their right to do so. And fine, criticize them, but don't demonize them for doing that, because they have nothing to do with what happened. And then with the recent revelations that's been going on with the whole Juario situation, you know, I saw Kaylin's video regarding the Famicom writer, and I don't know her personally. I don't know her at all. I've given her a couple of compliments via Twitter a couple of times here and there, but outside of that, I've never spoken with her. But from what I've seen of her, she does not seem like the kind of person who would hide a big secret like that. And for people to get onto her with the Famicom Rider movie that she made, I knew from the beginning she would not have made that if she had known what is going on. So these people who have gone after everybody, her, I can say till I'm blue in the face, leave them alone. People won't. But it would be nice if people would take into consideration that there is more to it than the overlying issue that's going on. And that's something I've talked about for a long time, is you have to look at things in layers. If we're just going to base everything on the outer layer, then we're not going to get anywhere. And yeah, okay, this situation's going on, but what led to it? You gotta look at all the layers to a situation before you can make a judgment. But we're human and we're quick to judge, and it's really sad because with the age of the internet, we're at that point where we'll read a headline or hear a sentence summary of what's happened, and we will just ride with it. We won't even bother looking at the facts anymore. And there's a lot of that going on in here too. Again, I've mentioned how I've hesitated to make this video simply because, or audio, simply because I wanted to have as much information as possible before I could make an opinion on it. Because at the beginning, yeah, I was angry. I was pissed, and I still am. And now I have more details as to what's going on. And on top of that, whoever is responding on Channel Awesome right now, and that's the one thing we can't really determine right now, is burying Channel Awesome, into the ground. We don't know who it is, and people are already making assumptions. So, and I will give them this: it has to be one of those three. I highly doubt it's Doug, but I also think Doug is the kind of person, he kind of reminds me of myself, where he sees an issue, he wants to say something, but he doesn't speak up. And that's leading to his downfall right now. He's not speaking up. Now, that's based on my assumption. He should say something, although at this point it's probably too late. I just wish that whoever, this goes back to the whole thing about cutting corners. If you think about it. Because again, let's go back to the game show. Let's go back to the unpaid contributors. Let's go back to whatever the other show was supposed to be, demo reel. It goes back to cutting corners. And in this case, they don't want to hire a PR person, or they don't have the money to. So why? So I guess someone up there thinks that they can do this on their own, and they're doing a piss poor job of it. Sorry. You know, it's so... It only gives me more reason to believe what's been going on, what the document says. And I'm not saying that I've not believed it, because I've been hearing this for years. Again, going back to the blind loyalty, I've been hearing this for years, and just recently I discovered who Lord Cat is. This is someone I've not heard of. Actually, the only time I heard this guy's name mentioned was in To Boldly Flee. If you've watched it, towards the very end, there's a scene. Spoiler alert, if anybody cares. There's a scene where I think the character's name is Gort appears in the house with Doug, and it turns out that it's James Rolfe, and Doug goes, "It's you," and he goes, "Who?" And someone says, "Who else could have been?" And James says, "Lord Cat." I didn't know they were referring to him. That was the only time I've heard that name, and I've been listening to these Channel Awesome Supercuts, and right down to the sexual assault allegations, he has talked about this endlessly. And because he comes off as a jerk, people aren't going to believe him. And you know what? People like him, I want to listen to. He doesn't sound like a person I would get along with, but you never know. I probably could. But they are usually the people who are they are very extremely blunt. They have no filter. And as much as I probably wouldn't like him, I would respect him for at least letting that out. And had I known this sooner, knowing myself, I probably would have fallen onto that bandwagon of, oh, well, he's just a jerk and he's saying this for or whatever. But looking back on it, that also is another example of blind loyalty. If he's been saying this for years, and people have been saying this for years now, and we've just been letting this slide, we're not holding our whatever you want to call them, our heroes, our idols, our inspirations, we're not holding them accountable for what they have done. So I just think this is a lesson, not just for them, not just for the people who made the document, but for everybody, that people may not be the heroes that they seem. And that's a very hard pill to swallow, but it's the truth. You know, it may, again, Doug comes off as a nice guy, but he seems very naive. He seems very whatever the opposite of outspoken is. I've always gotten that impression from him, that he doesn't like to get involved in big issues. So it wouldn't surprise me if he's just been trying to stay out of it as much as possible and hope that it goes away. But that's where the difference between him and I come, because I did say that I feel I could relate to him because I'm that way myself. But when the writing's on the wall, you know, I definitely would have to speak up. And that's something he's not doing. I don't know if it's for legal reasons. I don't know if it's because he doesn't know that this stuff was going on. And I can't really speak for Rob or Mashad. I've heard so many things about Mike Mashad in the last year, which is within the time that I've heard of this guy. I saw the name on the document when Allison was fired, but couldn't that even be considered fired if they weren't even paying her? Good question. Either way, I from what I've heard of him, he sounds like a grade A asshole. And that's probably the kindest thing that's been said about him. But Rob, I didn't get that impression off him. I've read the stories and whatnot. I saw some of the stories on the fan document, which I thought that was a big mistake right there to have done, just because people want to get caught up in the moment, and if they've had an experience, then they either bend the truth or maybe it didn't happen at all. Who knows? Regardless, I don't know if you've made it this far. If you have, thank you. I just wanted to get this out because this does weigh on a lot of fans, and I've never been invested in something like this before. And maybe it's because of the way we look up to him, as I mentioned earlier. I mean, I'm too old to be really looking up to anybody at this point, but it's just sad because you think you can relate to somebody only to find out that they're not the responsible or possibly even caring person you thought they were. But before I end this, I may or may not splice in the audio for you to hear. If I haven't done it already, I'll probably splice in the audio of me talking where that awkward moment was. Otherwise, and I'll probably splice in the video and kind of leave out the name just because I don't want I don't want recognition because of this. I just want to speak my mind and let this all out because it's something I've been wanting to talk about for the last 3 weeks here. Last thing I want to mention is just there were a lot of clearly there were a lot of people on Channel Awesome, and Guru Larry was one of them. First of all, before I even get into it, Guru Larry was one of them, who I've been following for about 2 years now. Never knew that he was on Channel Awesome, and I think that kind of speaks to the irrelevancy of the website itself. But I just found that really funny when I found out he was on there, because he's one of my favorite YouTubers, and I never knew. He's never mentioned it, so there's that. But I wanted to mention a couple of YouTubers that I have been following for a while now. Not YouTubers in general, but I mean from Channel Awesome. Mars Girl, Phaelus, Linkara, Angry Joe. I want to say Nostalgia Chick, but she goes by Lindsay Ellis now. I Todd in the Shadows, who I haven't been listening to recently. Rap Critic, Pushing Up Roses. Trying to think who else was there. Blockbuster Buster, who until this week I didn't know his name. I do want to give him props because his story was really heartbreaking, and I actually did see some of his videos when the website was still That Guy with the Glasses. And I didn't know his name. I just happened to click on the video, didn't catch his name, and I'm a very busy person, so I actually didn't remember who he was. So for the longest time I could not find this guy again, and I did like his content. I guess some people, I mean, just with anybody, some people don't like their contents, or don't like his content, but I enjoy it. So and then Obscura Lupa, I actually followed her on when they were on Blip, and I didn't know what her new channel was. I actually just recently subscribed to it again because I didn't know she was still making YouTube videos, and I actually did want to finish her Charm retrospective, which I had been watching before Blip went down. But I'm looking it up right now. Obscura Sloop. I say Obscura all the time from the beginning. Movie Nights is what she calls her YouTube page. I'm glad that I'm glad that she's still making videos. I didn't know she was still making videos. I'm just now getting on the Twitter bandwagon. I didn't really like it. Still don't really like it, but I starting to use that, and that's actually how I found her, because I started following Mars Girl, and then I saw that she was posting on there, and that's how I kind of got invested in this whole thing myself. Either way, I'm going beyond what I wanted to talk about at this point, but show your support to them. Tamara and Malcolm as well. Malcolm, I know he has his own YouTube channel, but I don't believe he posts on it much. And Tamara, I subscribe to her as well. I haven't seen much content from that channel outside of, well, she's doing Tamara Never Scenes, which is on Channel Awesome, which again, I'm not necessarily supporting. Tamara, put those on your channel, because I still would like to watch them. Yeah, and a lot of people are going, well, how can she consider herself a movie buff if she hasn't seen the movie? It's like, hey, I have not seen a lot of the same movies she has. I just, you know, how do you classify it? I'm first generation here, second generation. I didn't have a lot of exposure to a lot of pop culture from the 80s and 90s, like some people have. So I do have some, just not on the level of some of these other people. One last thing, I don't know if a lot of people regret the time they've spent on Channel Awesome, but I had a friend who once told me that people come into your life in some way, shape, or form, and it's only to serve one purpose. And I truly believe that in this case. Had I not been in the line to meet Doug Walker, I would not have met my fiance. And maybe that's the only reason why I was a fan in the first place. You just never know where some of these things can lead. And again, it's what we take from these experiences and learn from them in some way, shape, or form. Regardless, again, I'm getting beyond the point. If you like this, let me know. I won't suggest subscribing to me because I don't know when I'm going to post another video. Again, this just happened to be a one-off. And if I decide to promote the podcast once we go back up again, I'll go ahead and announce it on this channel as well for anybody who's interested. But at this time right now, I just don't feel it's right to do that considering the topic at hand. So again, thank you very much for listening, and until next time, keep platforming, everyone.